And so in short, there are really alarming numbers. In fact, just a few weeks ago, a mom died in New York. And it breaks my heart because she had interventions that were not necessarily needed. And even when you're talking, and again, I'll wrap this up so that we don't go too far.
Yeah, no problem.
So, and I wanted to make a video about this on my page, just to like really educate some of the followers on my doula page.
That would be great.
But when you look at the trauma that minority women have they've gone through for years, and even the father of gynecology, Sims, Marion Sims, there was a lot of controversy recently because his statue was taken out of the Central Park in New York. And long story short, he's the founding father of gynecology. He created a bunch of different utensils, and he practiced on enslaved women. He practiced cesareans, unmedicated, with no pain meds, with no anesthesia. He practiced clitoral suturing and vaginal procedures, and for years and years, and sometimes over 30 times on one woman. And these sorts of just injustice, acts of malicious intent have generationally impacted birth, have generationally impacted the way women carry babies. If you think even about with everything else that's going on right now, people are suffering. And when you're pregnant, you carry on the suffering. You physiologically respond to stress, and your cortisol levels are increased, and all of those responses happen. And so that is why numbers are significantly higher in Black and brown women in terms of infant and maternal death rates. And
that's crazy. I'm so glad you shed light on that. And I know that it probably within the past 6 months to a year, there's definitely been a little bit more conversation around it.
Right.
Because I wasn't even aware until after I had Xander that was a huge problem.
Yeah.
And so thank God that everything worked out okay with me at the time. But I think what helped was that I had a huge support system. And of course, this was prior to coronavirus. So I had like 3-4 people in my room.
Yeah.
I had also my, Louisa, my college roommate, who's a nurse practitioner. She was able to kind of be there too, to be my advocate.
Yeah.
So it sounds like every pregnant woman should be entitled to that support system, that advocate, especially someone who's trained and know what they're doing. Because, the dads in the room, they may not know, unless they're trained and educated on what's the right thing to do.
And
so
sometimes dads are overlooked.
Huge.
Sometimes dads are not looked in the eye. They're not seen. They become invisible in the labor and delivery room, especially if there's something happening. It becomes this is about mom and baby thing, and dads are sometimes disregarded. I have a close friend of mine who is an educated man, is doing great in life, and he recently had a baby, and he shared his experience and said that not once did someone look at him and say, "Hi, I see you. Like, congratulations on your baby too," right? And so there's this sort of separation that occurs, especially if there's an emergency situation. So
wow, that's crazy, and that's the reality we face. But I'm glad that now we have the knowledge, the information, so that we can change, the future, and we can do better for ourselves and for our women, for our family, our friends, for everyone. So that's huge. I'm glad you spoke on that. I know that was not a part of some of the original interviews.
Sorry.
But I was like, I really want to ask this because, it's prevalent and it's going on in the world right now. So
and people don't understand that. And I think that there's also, and again, not to, go all the way off on this, but I think that people are afraid to call facts sometimes, They're afraid to say racism. They are afraid to say inequities and disparities, and they don't necessarily have the, maybe not just, maybe lacking a bit of knowledge, but lacking the courage that it takes to really shed light on the truths and on our history. It's, yeah.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I'm actually, even just this week, there's just been so much craziness going on, even right now. I think I'm starting to actually see more and more people than ever before from all walks of life really just outpour and outcry like this just has to change. And so you're right. And I even fall into that category sometimes where I just want to be neutral. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I had to post something yesterday and just be like, this is the reality we face. I don't always have all the answers, but it's important that we shed light, because if we don't speak up or do something, then it just gets worse.
Right.
But you're right.
When you're raising Black children, right? When we raise our Black children, we just can't ignore what's really happening.
Yeah, you really can't.
You can't.
You really can't. So that's huge. And it's kind of interesting how all of that kind of ties into even what we're talking about today. Yeah. So what, I would love to know your story and what made you become a doula.
Yeah. So I was born with the innate response to mother. I just, like, I have a little brother who's 6 years younger than me, and when he was born, I truly, like, mothered him up until I had Jalea. And it seems silly, but really, you know, I would get up in the middle of the night and make his bottles. He slept in my room. I naturally have always been really, really, really good with babies. It's like one of my, I don't know, God-given talents to be able to calm and love on babies, even if, like, nothing else works. I've had families call me in the middle of the night, like, Alyssa, please just come over and help, please, right?
Yeah.
And so I've always been drawn to babies and motherhood. And then obviously, like, my story of being a teen parent, and for those of you who don't know, I had my daughter when I was 16, and I immediately knew how to mother. It just came natural. And my daughter is 13 now, and she is amazing. And granted, like, the struggle has been real, right? Like, there have been really tough days in parenting and finishing school. I went to college. I received my master's degree, and it was at that point when I really engaged in the work of maternal and child health through my master's degree program that I wanted to be more involved in addressing the disparities of minority women in maternal and child health. And so up until that point, I had been attending births in the role as a doula without realizing it. And so there were a couple of different births, like some of my good friends, some clients that I had. I worked at Healthy Start at the time. And they didn't have anybody to birth with them. And so I would go and I would be their support system. And I didn't even really know what I was doing at that point. And so twice the one OB had pulled me to the side afterwards and was like, listen, like, have you thought about going into nursing? Like, we would, you know, love to have you here. And in my mind, I'm like, there's no way I'm going back to school. Like, I just finished my grad degree. Like, absolutely not.
For sure.
And then I was birthing with my best friend, with her son. And it was just myself, her husband, and their midwife. A nurse, like, came in afterwards, but the nurse wasn't in there when she actually birthed him, which is interesting. But so she pulled me to the side afterwards, outside, like, of the room, and she was like, hey, she was like, have you thought about, like, going into midwifery? You should, you know, really consider this. And I was like, no, like, I just finished school, da-da-da-da. And she was like, listen, like, you really need to become a doula. And so I had, you know, thought about it along the way, and her conviction over my life was like, okay, I'm doing this. And so I did. I finally, you know, went and did the training, and it's exactly where I'm supposed to be. Like, in addition to the education, the educator in me, my doula work is so special, and I have been blessed with the opportunity to pour into families in a way that is very authentic and real, because I've come from similar situations, and now my clientele is like all over the place. It's amazing. There's all sorts of different experiences and people that I work with. So that's where it started from. The baby lady in full effect.
I love that though, and thank you for sharing your story. There's always a story behind why we are where we are. I think that's amazing, and I do believe God was really preparing you.
Absolutely.
You know, from when your brother was born up until now. It's just amazing how life takes its course. That is such a really cool story. So I know some ladies on here are probably thinking, okay, I'm convinced. I definitely want a doula. How does one properly and safely find a doula? And what are some practices you recommend? Should they interview them?
Yes.
And what's that process like?
So good. So you can look, like you can Google doula. Sometimes doulas are associated with different certification programs, and they have like a list. Sometimes if you go to the local birthing center, you can ask them for a recommended list of doulas. My personal suggestion would be for you to ask around your group of peers and see kind of who had a doula and their experience with that person. So every doula is different and has different specific practices that they have for their clients, and it is so important that you interview them. So for example, I am a very, very physical doula. I'm very hands-on. I do a lot of rebozo work. I do a lot of pressure work. I'm on the floor. I'm bent in a split. Like I'm wherever I need to be. Like,
Right.
That's where I'm at, right? And other doulas are not, right? So some doulas are very emotionally supportive. Hey mama, you're doing a good job. Like, you know, we're almost there. And I say those things too. Like we have to, you know, emotionally and verbally affirm the mom. And so it just depends on what the mom wants.
True.
And sometimes you may not necessarily fit with someone's personality. So as much as it's important for the mom to interview the doula also has to really be willing and ready to work with the family, right?
Sure. Good point.
So for example, if their beliefs, their core values and their core beliefs don't align, there may be some unconscious bias that occurs later on throughout the delivery process that could potentially affect the relationship and like the safety and security of mom while she's birthing. And so it's really important to like run through some of those core values, core beliefs, and really be true about like who you are and what you want your birth to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's good to know, because you're right. You can't just pick anyone. You know, you want to make sure that they're in alignment with your goals, your vision, your plans. You're right, because that would be a disaster if you guys are on two different planets, you know, speaking different languages. So yeah, you're right. That's good.
I think a lot of that there, you know, just an example of if there's some sort of like surrogacy and same-sex couples and religious beliefs and non-beliefs, like those things come out in labor. Things that have happened to mom, traumas that mom may have not even been aware of, come out during labor and delivery. And so doulas have to be careful about what they say and how they say it. If mom was potentially sexually abused or molested as a child and someone said just one more time, and then we say one more time in birth, triggering words can cause physiological sort of effects. So you have to be able to interview the doula and vice versa to really share some of those intimate memories or intimate situations that might have happened in life.
For sure. That's a really good point. And I wonder, do you guys as a doula, and you probably do, have some type of like questionnaire maybe that you ask, kind of profile and understand their background so that you can be sensitive to some of the things that may have happened and things like that. That's good to know.
Yep.
Nice. That's cool. Awesome. Well, I think I got pretty much covered most of our questions. actually, here's one other one. Is this something for doula service? Is this something that can be covered in insurance, or is this something that people pay out of pocket?
Okay, so some insurance companies cover doulas. So yes, for some insurance companies, you have to call and discuss that with your insurance company. The rate, though, that insurance companies cover is not equivalent with the rate that doulas charge, and all doulas charge different rates. Some doulas, like myself, I work with my families in payment plans. Some doulas want all of it up front. Some do a sliding scale. So it all depends on who you hire. But the majority of doulas that I know only accept like cash payments, personally paid clients. The insurance companies, that stuff can get a little bit redundant and the paperwork process, and then you don't get paid for several months after the birth happened and those sorts of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Cool. Good stuff. Well, I think that pretty much wraps it up for me. Okay. So if someone wants to get in contact with you and they're like, okay, I want to work with Alyssa, I'm interested, what's the best way to get in contact with you if they want to learn more? And so
I am available always. I'm always available. It's the life of a doula. And you can find me on Instagram at Breathing Through Life Tampa Bay.
Awesome.
The same thing on Facebook, Breathing Through Life Tampa Bay. You can send me a message. I will give you my cell phone number, and we can FaceTime, we can text, we can call. I'll meet you at the park. Birthing conversations are my favorite.
Nice.
This is really what I'm passionate about and what I do through and through. And so sometimes moms will not use me as a doula, but they'll ask questions to just get some clarification before they go in, and that's totally okay too. So at Breathing Through Life Tampa Bay.
Nice. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And I see we still have a few people in the room. So before we wrap up, if anyone has any questions before we go that maybe we didn't get to, feel free to put that in the comments below. One other question, and I guess I'll just start with one to get the convo going. How has coronavirus and COVID-19 and all that stuff, how has that affected you? Because I know, at least for me down here, we can only have one support person. Yeah. So, how has that affected you and your services?
Yes, so it has affected me, unfortunately. So the same here. I live in St. Pete, and I practice birth work all over Tampa Bay. And right now there is only one person allowed in the birthing room, and typically it's the partner, and in sometimes some cases it's been like the maternal mother. And so unfortunately I have not been able to attend some of those births that I had with clients who were birthing in the hospital. However, birthing centers are still allowing doulas, and home births obviously are still allowing doulas. And so that has been a blessing through this. But I am really looking forward to the restrictions being lifted for doulas specifically. Doulas are essential workers. Like we are absolutely right. We are essential to the birthing process. And you have to think that if you've worked with a client the whole pregnancy and now all of a sudden you can't be there, that's traumatizing. That's frustrating. It's overwhelming. And so I think that there is a negative, there's just a lot of frustration surrounding what's going on, and I'm hoping and praying that the restrictions are lifted for doula soon.
Yes, me too. Oh my gosh, it's scary. And I know I had heard, I think it was maybe in like New York or something, but when the coronavirus first happened, the quarantine happened, that they weren't allowing anybody. Yep. And I'm like, that's crazy. Yep.
Think of a mom birthing alone. Whew.
I cannot imagine. There's no way. That is just a recipe for a disaster. I just can't imagine. I don't know. I think by now that may have been lifted because
I think that dads are allowed, or like one person is allowed up there.
It's just crazy. But I agree. I do believe you guys are essential workers, and that should be allowed. And then you can have like maybe one additional support partner.
Right.
But I see you guys as part of the staff, really. So. Maybe that'll change.
And even with like all of the PPE gear, there's just a barrier that is present now with with the virus. So birth is a very intimate, very vulnerable place to be.
Yes.
And there's a lot of physical happenings with your body, and there's a lot of counter physical pressures that need to happen to help moms cope. And when you have to wear masks, and when you have to, and granted, like, obviously we're as safe as possible, and we want to ensure that everyone is safe, but I do believe that there's also now an additional barrier to providing the proper care and support for mamas, and we just have to get through it together. We have to have hope and trust that this too shall pass.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
This went so well, and you really shed light on some really, really important topics. And I'm just excited that now, you know, women can know more about their options, and so can their partners too, so they can, you know, spread the word to everybody. Because that's important. You know, if you don't have health, then you don't have life. So
exactly.
Thank you for joining with me today, and
thanks
everyone for tuning in. And be sure to follow Alyssa at Breathing Through Life Tampa Bay.
One of the questions came in.
Oh, there's a question. Yay!
Yes. Hi, Jacqueline. That's my sister. Thank you for jumping on. She said, so how many hours do you typically spend with a mom over the course of the pregnancy? This is a really great question.
Perfect. Yes.
So again, every doula is different. No pressure for any other doulas watching this. I see my clients on paper 3 times. I do 3 different prenatal appointments. One of them is a full labor and delivery education session. The second session is a full comfort technique and breathing session. And then the third session is a complete breastfeeding education session, so that mom and support team that they're fully aware of what's happening before it happens. Each of those appointments are about 2 hours.
Okay.
I am known to occasionally pop in, though, on you. I will come by, check on you. I've gone like to the beach with some of my clients. We've gone to coffee in between time. So there's I'd say about 10 hours with the clients while they're pregnant. And then we are there as doulas through the length of birth. Usually mamas will call us on the fore end of active labor, and then we're there all the way through the delivery of the baby. And like I said earlier, I stay about 3 hours postpartum. And so that usually, for any given birth, I'm usually there between, on a good, easy birth, 9 hours. And on more consistently, I'm there for about 14 hours. Anywhere between like 9 and 14 hours. And then I come back afterwards because you can't get rid of me. And I see my clients again 3 times postnatally. Again, each appointment, for the first 2 appointments, those are about 2 hours long. And then when the baby is 6 weeks old, I watch the baby for a few hours so that the mom and dad can go out and have their first glass of wine or their first little date night after the baby's born.
That's
so
really nice.
Maybe that's like, I don't know, 40 hours? I didn't do math very well there, but a lot of time.
Yeah, no, that was a great question. So thank you, Jackie. And that's so cool. I love that extra perk at the 6-week postpartum mark, you know, allow them to go on a date night or maybe get some sleep, whatever it is. That is definitely so nice to have.
There who knows, who knows how to care for a newborn, who is familiar with you and your baby. I mean, sure, sometimes grandparents are around and sometimes they're not, and sometimes the grandparents are tired, and sometimes families are by themselves. So just an extra.
So true.
Yeah.
So true. I was so grateful when my sister Tiffany, she came down. I think Xander was like 2 or 3 weeks old, but it was so nice to I called her down. I was like, do you mind coming down at 5 a.m. and just watching him? I need to get like 3 hours of sleep.
I love it.
But yeah, having that companion, that partner is just everything. Wow, this was great. So is there any other questions before I go? I don't want to miss anyone. Is that it? I think so. But this was great. We talked about so much today that
we did.
This
was really good. Thank you for having me. It's
Of
definitely
course.
encouraging me to, I really want to get better at being more involved on my doula page, and really sharing, you know, some thoughts through video. Occasionally I do, but there's some other just things on my heart that I feel like the world needs to know, specifically the birthing world. And so yeah, this was encouraging for me to just, you know, do that.
Yay. You totally should. You have such an amazing presence on video, and I know you have so much knowledge to give and to share. So,
Hey,
thanks,
Tim.
Tim. Very informative. Yes. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, this
Okay,
was
well,
great,
thanks for
girl.
having me. And if you ever want to dive
Definitely.
deep into any like specific topics, let me know. Especially in terms of parenting and such. All of that that's my jam. I had a 2-hour a 2-hour walk in the park the other day with a woman who wanted to just ask me questions about parenting.
Wow. Yeah. Let me tell you, pregnancy is one thing, and then actually raising a kid.
Right. It's a whole nother game.
Yeah. Lots of questions. Oh my gosh. So that's amazing. I love that you just provide so much value, and you truly are a companion and a partner and an advocate. So we definitely need more women like you. So I'm so glad we talked about this today. And this probably won't be the last. I'm sure we'll do more of these later on. So that's so exciting.
All
well,
right.
thank you so much,
Good to see
Alyssa.
you.
Good
Bye.
seeing you too.
Bye,
Stay
everyone.
safe.